I'm going to start today by reminding us a little of our common history that we're all familiar with. For a long time, we perceived that the earth was flat. We knew it was so because we could see it with our own eyes. Eventually, of course, that perception proved to be false, and we had to abandon that idea. For a long time, we also perceived that the earth was at the center of the universe. We knew it was so because we could see it with our own eyes. The heavens were full of bodies of various types moving about the earth. Eventually, that perception turned out to be false as well, and we had to abandon it. Sometimes our perceptions are wrong, and they prevent us from seeing the truth that might be right in front of our face. Despite this, we sometimes do see the truth. And sometimes, when this happens, great transformations can take place. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Gene Tierney, and I'm the author of a new book titled Whole Earth Justice, and I'm delighted to be here today to tell you a little bit about it. I describe the book as contemporary social commentary wrapped in a fictional adventure story. Now, what that means is that while the characters and events depicted in the book are fictional, the issues and subjects that they're dealing with are very real and in fact happening to us today. At the center of the story is a woman named Justice Miller. Now, Justice is a popular but controversial professor of economics at the University of Minnesota. She's popular for how she teaches, but more importantly, she's popular for what she's teaching. A coming new renaissance and age of prosperity in our lifetimes. Now, this view of hers, that we're on the cusp of a great economic and cultural transformation, puts Professor Miller outside the mainstream of academic socioeconomic thinking. But Professor Miller isn't one to conform easily. Her unique economic perspective and philosophy are informed by the mentorship of her late grandfather, who was an anthropologist and who saw large patterns taking place in human civilization over long periods of time. Patterns that indicate big changes to come. Not just far off in the future, not just brought about by new whiz-bang technology, but changes in humanity itself. Changes that are happening right now. Through a twist of fate, Professor Miller is propelled into a position of prominence as a leader of a spontaneous social and environmental movement called Whole Earth Justice. Now, the Whole Earth Justice movement is informed by her unique perspectives and is different than anything that has come before it. Different in its style and politics, different in its strategies and consequences, and different in the reactions it provokes from adversaries. So please hang on while we're transported to her classroom at the University of Minnesota campus, where we get a glimpse of some of Professor Miller's unique and controversial ideas. Sound effect. Oops. Oh, okay. Well, I was afraid of this. It appears we didn't make it all the way to her classroom. For that, you have to buy the book. But we did make it to a summary presentation. So we'll just have to make do with that. There are really three ideas that form the backbone of Professor Miller's unique perspective and philosophy. You'll no doubt be familiar with each idea, but taken together and seen through the lens provided by her grandfather, they take on new meaning. So let's get started. Idea one. Atoms, the fundamental building blocks of all matter, are inanimate. In fact, no portion of the atomic world is alive. It's only when a group of atoms combines into a cell that life appears. That means that life is an emergent property of interdependent community. A community of subatomic particles makes up an atom. A community of atoms makes up cells. A community of cells makes up our organs. And a community of organs makes up what we think of as us. And we, along with all the other living creatures who share this earth with us, make up the ecological community of life upon this planet. Not all communities become life, but all life emerges from communities. One of the implications of this idea is it makes it harder to define the boundaries of living things. Our borders become fuzzy. For example, we breathe in oxygen, we use it as fuel, and then we exhale it as carbon dioxide. The plants take in the carbon dioxide, use it as fuel, and then exhale it back as oxygen. It's an interdependent system in which one side cannot survive without the other. And yet, we think of our heart and our lungs and our bloodstream as being part of us. But we don't think of the plants in the same way. This boundary fuzziness applies through time as well. I mean, our personal characteristics like our eye color, body type, talents, all brought to us through time from our ancestors in our DNA. Let me give you another example. Steve Jobs and Apple Company introduced us to their smartphone in 2007. But how much of the knowledge incorporated into the iPhone did they actually develop? Not very much, actually. Every material, every component, every manufacturing process, and every element of basic science has a history, going further and further back in time and involving more and more people, most of whom are lost to history. So just as our DNA carries genetic information across time from our ancestors, most human work product of every type builds upon the accumulated knowledge of civilization itself. Innovations and knowledge that go back hundreds of thousands of years. Life is an interdependent system. Our work, our characteristics, our thoughts, our breath, our nourishment, all dependent on processes and things external to what we think of as ourselves. Maybe the real question should be, how do we maintain such a limited sense of self despite knowing these facts? Now, you might tell me it's because of our senses. I mean, after all, if I pinch the table, I can't feel it. But if I pinch my arm, it hurts. But why would our sensory system evolve over millions of years in such a way so as to leave out half of our respiratory system out of our sense of self? The answer to that question comes to us courtesy of the scholarship of Donald Hoffman, who is a professor of cognitive sciences at the University of California, Irvine. Our senses didn't evolve to show us the truth about reality. They evolved to help us interact with it. Life, including our own, is an interdependent system. Our sense of self, separate from, independent of, or superior to the rest of reality, is an illusion. An illusion that evolved over a long period of time to keep us focused on what we needed to do. How ironic that a perception limiting mechanism that evolved to keep us focused on what we needed to do should today, through the same mechanism, be limiting our perception on what needs to be done. There is no living me, only a living we. Idea 2, our collective journey. Now, generally, the development of individuals follows a familiar path. Childhood, characterized as dependence. Adolescence, characterized as independence. And adulthood, characterized as interdependence. Do we collectively develop along a similar path? Can we see a development process taking place in our history? If so, can we determine our current location in that process? And what does that tell us about the way forward? Prior to the Renaissance, most people lived lives of dependent servitude, subject to the requirements of royalty in one form or another. But after the Renaissance, and through the scientific revolution, the age of exploration and colonization in the Americas, the Enlightenment, and multiple industrial revolutions, things changed. Specialization and independence became hallmarks of Western civilization's advancement in culture. We divided the world into separate, definable parts, and then we studied them independently. The study of natural phenomena morphed into independent spheres called biology and chemistry and physics. We developed new forms of democratic government by, for, and of the people, independent people we called citizens. And our new democratic government acted through independent processes as well. If the air was smoggy, we passed the Clean Air Act. If the river starts on fire, we pass the Clean Water Act. If the economy is slow, we stimulate growth. And if our independence is threatened, we go to war to defend it. Specialization and independence have been baked into our culture and our way of thinking for 500 years. And it's been successful. Until now. Today, many of our most pressing problems defy simple, independently focused solutions. Whether it's the burning of rainforests to provide economic opportunities to disenfranchised people, or refugees forced off their land by climate change, or continuing to rebuild in flood-prone or fire-prone areas after disasters. Independent thinking is not adequate to deal with the problems we face. The issues of environmental sustainability, economic prosperity, and social justice are so deeply intertwined, they cannot be solved independently. Climate change, mass extinction of species, an economy that is both prosperous and equitable. These are problems whose solutions require us to transcend in the indifference and alienation inherent in independent thinking. The solutions we seek can only be achieved through greater interdependence and the respect for the other it brings. Now, this kind of change may strike some as idealistic, or impossible, or partisan, or altruistic, or even inconsistent with human nature. But I believe they're wrong. It's happening right now, all around us. And when you know how to see it, you'll see it everywhere. But more importantly, when you know how to see it, you'll see opportunities everywhere. Not just opportunities to survive, but opportunities to thrive. Okay, so this is the halfway point, and we're going to do some kind of a joke or something.